folks. Sorry for the delay. Let's get started. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. This is Comprehensivist Wednesdays that we do in collaboration with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. And I'm always amazed by everybody at the Thinking Society. And Marissa is presenting today. So Marissa, what are you going to talk about today?
Hi guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about the danger of the single story. So Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has a video posted on, it's a TED Talk, and it's posted on YouTube, and it's called The Danger of a Single Story. It's from 2009, but it's timeless, and it's just presence of that it gives when you watch it. It is a very popular TED Talk. I was introduced to it by CJ, and the theme of this video we have encountered already with his various Comprehensivist Wednesday topics. Specifically, it was in the one where we're talking about the multiple hypotheses, and also in the one where we spoke about the myth of the one truth. So those threads and themes we're gonna go into today to talk about. So just for a quick recap for all of you for what the video entails, this is a woman from Nigeria who came to the United States when she was 19, and she was sorry, a moment. She can't delete iPhone.
Yep, okay. Done.
Sorry,
already.
So apologies. Something that struck her was how she was viewed by people here in this country. But even before that, she had started to ruminate on this idea of different stories from different people, because in Nigeria, she read all these fairy tales and these stories from the United States, from the Americas, the first world countries, and she wanted to be an author. She wanted to write stories, but it didn't occur to her to write any stories about her people or anyone who looked like herself, because the only books she had read all looked like the fairy tale princesses that we are used to from the United States, with the blonde hair, the blue eyes, talking about the shining sun when it does come out and how lovely it is. So it made her think and wonder what she didn't know, that it was okay to write books about people who looked like herself, just because she had never seen it in a book. And when she came to the United States, it was amplified because her roommate was shocked at how well she spoke English and that she knew how to use a stove. And this is because the story of Nigerians that her roommate had was one of people who spoke a foreign tongue and people who did not have civilized tools like stoves. And it's not that that's a bad story or a wrong story, it's an inaccurate story. So Adichie wields for us this beautiful tale. She puts in her personal anecdote tales to explain and to show us how every one of us falls prey to this. We have, and we shall again. So it's not a judgment video. She's not saying you do this, which is what makes it even all the more beautiful. She's saying we are all subject to this one story that we hear and we believe, we internalize, and then we regurgitate. This also ties in with the concepts we've been discussing a little bit on how everything we touch touches someone else. This idea of the connectedness and of the separation that can happen. So what she's telling us is that we have to acknowledge that every aspect has more than one side. and she makes some very powerful statements. My absolute favorite is her comment on the stereotyping. And she says, show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again. And that is what they do become. The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. And the problem with the one story becoming the only story is that we fall into many myths. We have, as human beings, there's this single perspective instinct where we find simple ideas alluring because we like feeling like we really know and understand something. This leads to the tendency to think that there is a single cause behind complex problems and that they can be solved with a single solution. This instinct leads us to misunderstand the complexity of the world around us. Our explanations of things in the world are often sparse and incomplete. And this is the illusion of the explanatory depth. And when we're looking at the idea of explanatory depth, what we're saying is, you know less than you think you do. So people frequently overestimate the extent to which they know about something. And this is what is perpetuated when we are embracing the single story. One of my, another favorite quote here from Adichie is, our lives, our cultures are composed of many overlapping stories. And this is key. And this is something I've been saying. She's a million times more eloquent than I am. But what she's saying to us is, again, it's A, none of us walk alone. And B, there's more intersection and there's more happening than your eye can see at first glance. By giving a pause as to whether what we're saying is the truth, the only story, that pause allows us now to consider whether or not there are other potential stories. And it's not a whether or not. What I'm hearing here, as she explained to us very eloquently in her video, it's that, yes, if we move forward assuming that there's always another story, we're now in position open. And when we're standing in this position, we're in a better place to consider multiple scenarios, multiple perspectives, multiple hypotheses. And then that takes us to more tolerance, more empathy, more compassion. We become better at all of our interactions. And so as teachers, as learners, as people who are growing in our community, we are improved by just that one little thing of stopping and wondering, what's the other story? So what came to mind for me here was the idea of basic algebra. In algebra, you have systems of equations, right? And so what I want to present to you here a little bit is just bring that up, just to give you another way to wrap your mind around this idea of embracing different concepts, as it were. And so give me just 1 second here. So a system of equations is, there's not just one, there's several different types. You have the inconsistent, you have the dependent, you have the independent. And an inconsistent system of equations is one where there's no solution because the lines are parallel. A dependent one is it's a dependent system of equations is when the same line is written in two different forms so that there are infinite solutions. And when you graph that, you actually don't see two lines, you see only one. These are just two examples. I think there's four more, right? But the idea here is that's the story of our lives. The story of everyone's life is this. You see the one line when you look at it straight on. But when you look at it from a different angle, you see the multitudes of equations that sit there to create the line upon line upon line. And so we live in a world where so many things are dependent solutions. And what does that mean? It means there's more than one story, because if there's more than one solution, it stands to reason that each solution has its story. And that's that's my analogy for the algebra parallel there. Hopefully I didn't lose anyone there, but that's kind of what came to mind for me. And she makes these very powerful statements in a very soft manner. It's so beautiful. When I watch the video, I feel her leading by example. She is acknowledging the various different stories that make up her life. And she shows us moments where she herself was short-sighted, where she herself, and not short-sighted, I apologize, that's an uglier word than she would ever use. There's no negative connotation here. And what she's saying is she heard one story. And instead of wondering if there was more to the story, if there was another story, if there were additional factors involved in the story, she heard the one story and took it as gospel. There was nothing else to be heard. These people are this. She equated that in her mind. When someone said another sentence at a much later date, she was actually shocked. It had never occurred to her that this person, whom in her mind she had given this one label, could possibly be another thing in addition to that one label. So the funny thing there is we all do that, small things, big things. She talks about, she was given a lecture and she had written a novel. She is a novelist, and she had written a novel about Nigerians, and somebody came up to her and goes, "Oh man, it's so sad that all Nigerian men are just like the character in your book. And, they're like these, horrible abusers." Well, her response was like, "Oh, I read this book, American Psycho. It's so sad that all American men are serial murderers." And she doesn't describe that, this was tongue in cheek. She doesn't actually believe that all Americans are serial killers. But what she explains is the reason she did not jump to that conclusion is that she had the benefit of a multitude of various different stories of American people that had come to her. So she had all these little bits of information and knowledge to help her amass a more complete and robust view of the variety of the American people. We all don't always have that, but if we're always seeking it, we walk forward a little bit more carefully, with more empathy, more humanity. There is a quote that she does say here, and so the first quote I gave you was much softer, right? And so she has one that is far more intense, and it's a little bit angrier, right? But it's so timely for telling us about the danger. She makes a statement that brings home the fact that it's not just that a one story is going to make us less well-rounded, or it's going to make us, less this or that. She uses the word danger with a very strong intent. And I'm going to give you guys the, I apologize here. 1 second. I will read it to you in a moment. I'm sorry, I've lost the page.
Let's take this opportunity of asking people, have you watched the video? You can say yes or no or Y or N in the chat. Go ahead, Marissa. Maritza, you're muted.
Oh no, so I'm sorry. Okay, guys, I swear I did prep for this, I promise. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. If we go back to the idea of our lives and our cultures are composed of many overlapping stories, how can we possibly walk with knowledge of our cultures and use it for our betterment, our improvement, if we fail to acknowledge that some of those stories even exist? That's what I'm hearing here. It's a very raw statement. And if you got the, if you were able to watch the movie, you can hear the raw emotion when she states that the problem and the danger of the single story is that it robs people of their dignity. And so the challenge is, we all here, we're budding comprehensivists, right? So we're all striving to learn more about a variety of topics and subjects. So we're on our way to amassing and accumulating different stories. We still have a danger to worry about and to watch out for. We may fall into the trap of believing that because we're amassing more stories than other people, that maybe we have enough stories, right? And we're good. But she states that there's always room to learn another story. And if we walk forward thinking that the path towards embracing a multiple solution, multiple story culture is by remembering to ask what the next story is, we have more enriched lives. And I think that it also allows better comprehensivism. When we're seeking additional stories, and let's put it in the realm of solution, an additional story is another bit of knowledge, another bit of information, more completeness. Because she does say to us, remember, she's saying it's not that they're not true, it's that it's incomplete when you have just the one story. So we're seeking more completeness. I think that's beautiful. And there's such value there. And it works in the emotional realm. And it works so very well in the analytic realm. Some things have very simple solutions. Most things have complex solutions, and possibly not, it's more often than not, it's solutions and not solution. And that, again, if we get stuck in our mind that we're going to find that one right answer or that one perfect something, there's so much that gets lost. And the robustness of a thing, of a person, of a culture, of a community gets lost when we have blinders on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. So folks, now we're going to go into the breakout rooms to discuss these ideas. And then I'm glad to see I was wrong. Actually, a far greater percentage of people than what I had expected have actually watched the video, so which is great. So please, let's discuss this amongst ourselves. The breakout rooms are going to be facilitated by Joe, Maritza, and Mike today. We'll do the breakout rooms for about 22 minutes, after which we will come back here with the best question that you have. Best question that is open in your mind. We'll collect all the questions, organize all the questions, and then do lightning round of answers to the questions. All right, starting the breakout rooms now. Back. All right, so folks, it's time for Q&A. What's the best question that you have? Go ahead and put the question on the table by typing an exclamation mark in the chat or raising your hand in Zoom. Who would like to go first? Go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Let's start with Joe. Joe, go ahead.
So there were a lot of very good points in our breakout room. And I'm trying to formulate a question out of them. But I guess one thing I have thought about is we talked a little bit about the idea of getting to know people that are outside of your immediate circle. And we talked about immigration a little bit as well. So is one of the answers to a one-story problem the idea, not that they've actually done it well, I can't say that everything's been perfect, but the idea of America being a melting pot, is that a solution to the one-story problem?
Wonderful.
And if so, that would be.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So no. I mean, it's just something where I've thought about it, where I'm not saying that there haven't been issues with the one story from an American perspective. Absolutely, there has. But as a melting pot, is that an answer to the one story problem?
Wonderful. Is melting pot an answer to the one story problem? Excellent. Next up is going to be, give me just a second here. All right, next up is going to be Jyoti, Marissa, Kevin, Sanjay, Jeff, Mike, and Ambika and Jang. So let's start with Jyoti.
Okay, so my question is, sensitizing children in the elementary schools, will that help with the cultural acquaintance and growing literate in understanding different ethnic groups and help to overcome this one single story?
Wonderful. I'll make it a general question. How can education help solving the one story problem? Wonderful. Next up is, I'm going to skip Marissa. We'll go with Marissa a little bit later. So let's go with Kevin, followed by Sanjay. Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Shranka. My question, what's the good ways to read a story? As we know, a single story is danger.
Okay, how do you, what's the best way of reading a story, right?
Yes.
Okay, how do you read a story? Excellent. Next up is Sanjay.
Okay, thanks. So I looked at this in a slightly different way with what Chimamanda Adichie presented. So she's talking about, I think from a sociological point of view, about how we are raised and grow up and see the world from one vantage point, one perspective, or usually from the perspective of the written word, as she presented. But this idea is, to me, it's about more than only sociological perspective. It's really about philosophical perspective. So the simplest way I can explain it is that we're all taught to look at a single answer or a single solution. It's a single story, meaning there's only one answer to things or one viewpoint. And I think that's not necessarily the best way to look at things. We need to consider that there are more than one viewpoints.
Wonderful. So the distinction between social one story and philosophical one story. So wonderful. We'll put that as a question. Thank you, Sanjay. Next up is going to be Jeff, Laura, Mike, and Ambika. Jeff.
I wonder if there's a bridge that we might cross within ourselves regarding the story that we tell ourselves. Because I think that there is an incredibly strong predisposition in human beings to want to believe that our story is right. And what do we need to do in the way we talk to ourselves to persuade ourselves that our story is just one story.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So it's a question of how do we distance ourselves from our story? Next up is Laura, followed by Mike. Laura.
Following on what Jeff just said, not too long ago, I was telling my daughter a story, what I believed was her childhood. And she said, what? What are you talking about? That never happened. Are you making things up again? Because I've been known to tell a few tales lately, thinking that I'm telling the truth. And then they say no, and I can't say yes or no. But anyway, I thought it was very funny because I was sure that I remembered the past really well. So that's a case in point. The other thing is sort of like, I agree. There's one thing, like I can have a story myself and then I can either retell it properly or not. I don't know. There's that story. But then there's a story when it involves more than just me. So if it's one or more, whose story is it? That, is it the sum total of our stories put together that then is the individual story? How does it go? What's the in a society, each one looking at the same series of events may have a different view of the story, my story, so to speak, or they may be engaged in the same kind of series of events and have a different story out of it. So
Wonderful.
Which is the correct story? So that's my question. Is the collaborative, the sum of those stories, the story, and how do
Wonderful.
you figure
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. So how do stories of multiple people interact with each other? Next up is Mike, followed by Ambika and Jang. Mike.
Yeah, I think the question is, if we have a commonality or if we're collaborating for a common cause, like what we're doing here tonight, does that alleviate the boundaries that naturally exist between people? Because if you're musicians and you're playing a song or you're in a band, does it really matter where the rest of your bandmates are from as you're producing the music? If you're actors on a stage, does it matter where we're from if we're there for the same reason? So
Wonderful. Wonderful. Excellent question. So I'll put it as, does collaboration between different people with a common cause, is that a solution to the one story problem? Next up is going to be Ambika, Jang, Ed, and Madeline. Ambika, what's your question?
So I have to share an observation before I get to the question as I'm seeing it unfold. I think standing on that idea of one story itself is problematic. That everybody's only telling one story. I think when we are talking about human experiences, there are different shades of stories which we all listen to and share. I mean, I've taught, I don't know, 15,000 students in different classes. So this is not something new to me. However, and to follow up with what Mike just said, when we are doing something together, you take the one that works the best. You can't let go of that in the interest of, allowing everybody's feelings to be met, because I think that is currently a problem. And I have to say that when we come up with certain cultural issues, poverty is across the board. It's not particular to any one racial group. It's across the board. This is community college, Do
you have a question, Ambika?
I'm coming to that. And so how then are you able to determine which story would be the best? Because sometimes that doesn't suit everybody. I think education needs to just share these stories, because right now there's division at the college, horrible division. And that's not conducive to happy education. So what system would you create to have stories be shared that are different and yet, take us to our humanity?
Thank you, Ambika. How do we share stories and benefit from stories of each other? Next up is Jang, followed by Ed and Madeline. Jang.
Yeah, so I want to follow up on what Joe mentioned. I think, America have the opportunity to be this melting pot, but actually I think it's more accurate described as salad instead of melting pot. Everybody stay there in their own circle. You have Korean town, you have Indian area, you have Chinese area. I think we talk about the reason because that one story, whatever, you don't get challenged. It's too much effort to reach across different culture. So what will help us to melting better, to create this renaissance of culture, in America?
Wonderful. So how do we take the stew of America, where the individual things still maintain their identity while actually releasing its flavor in things around it, to a melting pot? And what is it? Is the ideal a melting pot, or a stew, or a salad? So how do we interact? Wonderful. Next up is going to be Ed, followed by Madeline. Ed.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing essentially as Amico. We are really a salad. We are not a melting pot at all. Perhaps in the suburbs we are a melting pot, but I think of New York City, the mosaic, the different neighborhoods. It's a salad of people. Each element of the salad gives a different type of, a different flavoring, a different view, a different concept. And that's what really America is. It is not a melting pot. It is a salad. You might refer to it as a stew, but each element gives it a little different flavor and a different aspect. And that's the way I look at it.
What's the question?
The question is, are we more of a salad than a melting pot? That is the question.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Madeline. Madeline, go ahead. What's your question?
Yes, I thought this was a remarkably well-structured talk. At the beginning, she spoke about the problem, which was that is the books that were available to her as a child. At the end, she talked about the solution she'd come up with for people who are currently children, which is making more books and different books available to children where she grew up. So since this is Comprehensivist Wednesdays, I would say my question would be, how do we do what she did and find the solution that is embedded in the problem?
Wonderful. How do we find the solution which is embedded in the problem? All right. Excellent. Excellent. All right. This is really a great range. Wait a minute. Marissa, your turn. What's your question?
Sweet. My question is framing. So if we, again, we've spoken briefly here at Comprehensivist Wednesdays about framing. So my question is, as we sit in an open position and we strive to accumulate various stories, what role does the framing of these stories play in that?
Okay, wonderful. What role does framing of stories play? All right. So this is really, really fascinating range of things. How about we start with the ideal? So we're saying, how do stories interact with one another? Is it a melting pot? Is it a stew? Is it a salad? What is it and what should it be? What are your thoughts? Try to keep your thoughts brief so we can get through as many questions as possible. So we're talking about what is and what should be. You can talk about both of them. Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you want to add, if you would like to comment on that. We'll start with Marissa.
So I think that this is a yes and kind of answer. Yes, all the stories overlap. The interactions are going to be there regardless of whether or not we see them. I think that it is a matter of seeking to see them, and you'll find that they're already there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marissa. Anybody else? Any thoughts about how about focusing on what should it be? Should it be a melting pot? Should it be a stew? Should it be a salad? What's the way of interaction of the stories? Ambika, what's your answer? Followed by Evanique.
Why should there have to be a certain kind of pot or dish? You know, we just show up as ourselves and we share as human beings from the heart and body and mind and spirit.
Wonderful.
And therefore the stories inform us, and that's what it is. I had two older Nigerian men in my class, and they would kind of laugh at what was going on because everybody wanted to, you know, make something be just theirs. And these guys had a blast. I mean, we had a great time. I had an Indian student who accused me of being racist. Okay. So
let's try to keep it brief.
I know, but you bring up topics, and how can it be just brief? So it is what it is. Let's not have to put us in a dish. We just show up as we are. And that's where the beauty is. Discovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambika. Next up is going to be Evanique, Mike, Kevin, Sanjay, Marissa, and Jang. Evanique, what's your answer?
I agree with it being, I like the salad bowl analogy. And the reason why is because, yes, everything comes together, but you can see the separate parts. And I look at that as America. It's like, yes, we are all here together. And if we could just accept each other's differences of what flavor each of us brings to the table, we can make a beautiful country together. Like, we can honor each other's cultural differences and just and our personal differences and just make it work and just have it like you can see everything and still have it be together.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Evanique. I think that e pluribus unum, I think that is a really deep idea. The one in the many. So it's like respecting the individuality and having the one at the same time. So next up is going to be Mike, followed by Kevin. Mike.
I was reading Ambika's reply. I actually see it more like a salad bar in that I don't want it in a bowl. I just go and I pick and choose and I put whatever dressing I want on the salad. My ex-wife was from Burma. She lived in India. She spoke Thai. I worked in New York City, and I've been in every situation you could possibly imagine. And I can honestly say, I don't want to stay within my own family for more than a half hour sometimes. I just want to pick up and go somewhere else and hang out with other people that I do improv with or I play chess with. And when the time is up, I go home. And I just find the beauty of it is that it's such an amazing thing when you can just communicate everywhere, you know, just pick whatever you want. When you're done, go home. I don't find it that hard personally. I think it's more like a buffet.
Wonderful, Mike. And that's why I live in New York. It has the best buffet of everything. Next up is Kevin, followed by Sanjay. Kevin.
Hey, I like your answer. I like a buffet over the melting pot, stew, or salad. Why we have made a choice? Every time make a different choice. Today a salad, tomorrow, like a melting pot. So be flexible from both sides. From one side, write story, another side is read a story. So that's I would say, Mike and yourself and Big, the lady she mentioned discovery, curiosity. It's open eyes, open your mind, try to learn from others, not just critical, not just political correct. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Sanjay, followed by Marissa and Jang. Sanjay.
Thanks. So I think we are more like a salad, but I would say more a viscous salad. But I wouldn't even use that analogy. I mean, I love food. I mean, I love these analogies we have, the food-based analogies, but I would describe it, I mean, to explain the diversity and the complexity of society, I would call it, a forest with weeds and flowers and bushes, but also with birds and snakes and porpoises, and even inchworms and insects. And the ground under our feet and the stones under our feet supports all of this. So society is a very complicated thing.
Wonderful, Sanjay. And I wanted to speak in the favor of metaphors. Metaphors are incredibly powerful because what they do is that they suggest a bunch of things and they come with what Julian Jaynes called paraphrase, in the sense that they talk about something, but they suggest a whole bunch of atmosphere around it. And in the process of saying it's not quite like a stew, but more like a salad, or more like a melting pot, or more like a forest, we are actually exploring the connections. What is it? We are exploring it from different angles. So this is using multiple metaphors in trying to figure something out, is like using multiple stories. Does this story fit? Does this story fit better? Is there some implications of this which are better than others? Does it capture something? And which of them, and how do you use them? So excellent, excellent for bringing up the forest, Sanjay. Thank you. Next up is Marissa, followed by Jang and Jyoti. Marissa.
I'm super stoked to go after the comment you just made, Shrikant, because I was going to propose to folks an ideal, a metaphor that is an ideal. I don't think this is what America is, but imagine a giant jar full of those Easter jelly beans. They're all the same exact size, but every one of them is a different color. And all the colors are so shocking and bright that it's impossible not to see each distinct color as you turn the glass jar around. I think that's the ideal, where we're all thrown in together. We all look to be about the same size, but our unique color still shines through. That's the metaphor ideal. But one more thing I want to point out is the idea melting pot. When I think melting pot, what comes to mind for me is what existed in my house perpetually. We had a pot for the oil, fry grease, and it was called the melting pot. And for those of you who cook, when things melt, it all mixes together, the oil. But when it cools down, it separates again, and you can see the different layers. You can see the dirty one with all the grits on the top. You scrape that, throw it away. And then you have the one that's a little clear, and then you have any water will be sitting in the bottom. I'm thinking that when the analogy for melting pot is used for this country, that's what they're referring to, where the beauty of this country is we have the ability, if we wish, to all swirl together. So we're in this distinguishable slurry. And then when it cools down, we all go back to a little bit more individual, but there's still a residual of each one left in each layer. So we're all a little muddier for dancing around together, but we still can retreat a little bit. Those are just the way I see it. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I think that each story, if it's being told properly and created properly, can actually add to the net of the stories. And I like this Sapolsky's formation, that is strong opinions weakly held. So you need to have a strong story, but it has to be weakly held in the sense that it has to be modifiable, where you're open to other stories, willing to pick it up, but that doesn't mean that you give up having your own story. You need your own story. And be open to the other stories as well. Next up is going to be Jang, Jyoti, and Laura. Jang.
Yeah, I think, I believe they have more things in common than difference. I don't see the difference between different race or even different gender. So personally, but somehow other people see it more clearly. So, and I start to understand when I listened to Jim O Yang recently, and they're talking about all this experience. I think when you're the few people in the industry, then you're easily singled out. That's why we have to go through that process to accepting the difference between the different people. Then we can surpass the surface. Then we can share more humanity or common things between the humanity. And think American, we still haven't go through that process. That's why we are so focused, which I really don't enjoy it. Like in the kids learning critical race, and they learn the Asian hate is like all this stuff. It's like, I don't want my kids to be victimized. So I just like, but I guess American hasn't, because the culture wasn't very inclusive before. That's why they need that process. People want to be seen. I was that's an interview of this woman in Crazy Rich Asian, and she's going to be in the Marvel, and she's on first female main actress in the Hollywood, basically represent Asian in a long time. So it's a big deal, but she never will imagine she had that opportunity. She will never have that before. So I think that shows, we have to go through this process, then we eventually will become a melting pot, maybe.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jang. Next up is Jyoti, Laura, and Joe. Jyoti.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether you call it whatever you want to call it, like a salad bowl or melting pot or what have you. You have to be a contributing member of the society. You have to produce, you have to do something for each other, and you have to consider yourself as part of something in this universe. And that's what counts. You can call it a galaxy with the stars and what have you. And I think each one of us should take the responsibility of doing something for each other, or to benefit the country or the society and each other. If you find somebody who's needy, do something for that needy person. Don't think that government is responsible for this person. So I think that, to me, makes more sense than having to define whether it's a melting pot or what have you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jyoti. Next up is Laura, followed by Joe. Laura. Laura, you need to unmute. Okay, next up is Joe.
So, I mean, I thought it was perfectly said when you said it, e plurimis unum. I mean, it actually, that captures it. The reason why it captures it is because it really captures the importance of the individual in the process. And the reason it's important to capture the individual, and I agree with Jyoti 100%. The metaphors, to me, I don't, they're helpful, but okay. But I think that they're the idea of the individual and their ability to challenge the single story and to challenge their conventional wisdom is the most important thing, because otherwise you're stuck in the single story. If the single story is about challenging what you believe, your belief system, and the reason the United States provides that kind of opportunity is that and I'm not saying it was a perfect setup. I'm not saying there weren't systemic problems. Obviously, we can go through them. But it was a place where a lot of immigrants were coming together so that you had the opportunity to challenge the single story, which is actually unique in the rest of the world. Much of so that it's an idea. So I think that the individual is kind of key in this entire process, because the individual is the only one who can challenge their personal dogma, or can challenge dogma to develop their own story and create their own narratives and to start to understand other people's narratives. That's all. So.
That's a wonderful point, Joe, that the prime mover of kind of creation of new stories comes from individual. And that's where all the new stories get added. You can take in stories of other people, but then it's the individuals who make make their own stories, new stories. And I think that is what the hallmark of the greatness of America is that it protects the individual. It enshrines, it idolizes that individual initiative and say that create a structure for all the individuals to be able to do their pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's about, not only formulate your own stories, but live your own stories. And through that, contribute to everything. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and just really quickly, because the opposite of that means that you conform to a story.
Yes.
So if you think about it in those terms, if you are, coming over and you're with one group and you're going to believe one narrative because you're part of a community, that the community then defines your story.
Yes.
Well, that's the story then.
Exactly.
It's not what you're not telling it; they are. So it's no different than the elders that we would look at in the Ascent of Man when they were dependent in an oral culture on who was running the tribe.
Wonderful. Perfect. Next up is going to be Laura, followed by Katie. Laura.
Yeah, that's the wonder of New York, because New York is a place of transience. And that's exactly what you described when you talk about the ability to have all these things happen at once. And so, yeah, it does happen. And you have multiple stories of all these different things happening. And so I think it is pretty incredible. I had something else to say, and again, didn't do fast enough for me. But yeah, I think it is pretty amazing. Having lived that, I've had multiple stories while I've lived here, and it's great.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Next up is Katie.
Yeah, I had just a small point. I remember yesterday too, we were in the Tao group. Someone made a comment about unlearning things. So that kind of resonated with your strong opinions loosely, how like sometimes you have to, part of learning is unlearning things.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Next, I want to, this is actually a very fascinating discussion. So, Marissa had made a very powerful and short presentation so that we have actually quite a bit of time. So I'm going to go over it I'm going to take this theme and I'm going to ask questions. This is the first question. I have a second and third question where we can build it up. The second question, I'll give you a little bit of preview. The second question is about, around the question that Mike asked, is collaboration with a common purpose a way of having genuine stories that interact with one another and mingle with one another and learn from one another? So what is the role of collaboration? So I'm going to talk a little bit. Again, I'm using metaphors. And then I'm going to open it up to comments on this question about the role of collaboration, the value of collaboration in getting away from the one story. The best example I can think of, again, building on what Mike said, is a jazz band, where each of the person has things to say, has a story, but you're creating a story together. You are interacting with stories of other people, and you're producing something which is actually much more than what you yourself can produce. If you actually notice really, really good, accomplished jazz players playing together, you can see that, they say something amazing. And because somebody else said something else that is connected to that and expanded it, they come back and they have more to say, which they did not have before. So it's the using the collaboration in order to even just elaborate what you have to say. So the question is about the role of collaboration, the value of collaboration in building up your story or getting away from the one story. So it's going to be Joe, followed by Marissa. If you would like to talk about it, go ahead and type exclamation mark. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that this was, kind of the best question that was asked. And the reason why I thought that is that if you think about it, and let's just, come back to, again, the founding fathers, or, something like that, that they had something common that they wanted to break away from England. Everybody had different backgrounds. You know, there were people from all different parts of the world, but that common goal allowed them to essentially create something that wouldn't have been able to be created by if they all were doing something separately. It's the same concept as a band, right? And a band comes together, they have one common goal: to create music that people are going to like. And those borders, actually, no matter what they have that common goal, so that it kind of allows you to integrate together no matter what. And so that's the importance of actually having a common goal and set of values in order to move forward. I think that's a really important point. There's also worth noting, though, that these kinds of things can create one story as well. And that's a really important point. So we can say that people, and she mentions this in the discussion, in the course of her discussion, how immigrants now today are scapegoated in a specific way. And the idea that we're kind of, that is it's a common goal to keep people out in certain cases. So if the common goal is essentially something that is negative, it could also work against you. So it's not to say that this is it only goes one way. It goes both ways. So that it's ultimately about values and having your values aligned. And this is, in a way, we could bring up the design way if we wanted to and talk about AIM, but I'm not going to go there. So it just for my own mental health.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Marissa, Jang, Laura, Sanjay, and Kevin. Marissa.
So I'm going to make a quick comment on something Joe said and then go back to the answer I was going to say. So the funny thing, so Joe, I'm going there for you. What Joe brings to mind to me is this concept of the compositional assembly, right? The couldn't get away from it. So but I think that the idea of a band where everybody's playing together with one goal to make the music, that's too limiting. I'm gonna give you another more complete visual. Bomba. If you've never heard of bomba, bomba is the traditional dance of the Boricua people, who are the people of Puerto Rico, and Boricua is what we are before we were colonized. In a bomba, the dance is such that the drummer follows the dancer, which is very unique to most musics. Most musics, the dancer follows the music. In this one, the music follows the dancer. And every now and again, she throws it back to him. And the drummer now will lead, but usually the drummer follows. And I think that's the type of composition we want. You said collaboration. I would like, and so I'm gonna slide into what my first thought was. I would like to remind people that a collaboration is the same, it's a synonym for community. It's a synonym for culture. We're talking about a collaboration of peoples in either situation. And the individual that stands alone is never so complete or robust as the individual that stands with other individuals. Adichie, in her video, she says to us, it's not that a single story is untrue or wrong. It is that it's incomplete. And I say this collaboration is key to more completeness. And that's how we get this notion of the single story, how we can wrangle it. Because if you have many individuals collaborating together to form a group that we're going to now call community, and then even bigger to call culture, every individual has their own story. but they also may have the story of someone else. And if I have a story of people Z, and Shrikant has a story of people Z, and Joe has a story of people Z, and Anton has a story, all of us come together, we bring all these stories. None of them is identical. And so you get a more robust picture of people Z when you put all of our single stories together. And that's the beauty of collaboration. It's almost seamless when you pull together. But the thing about it is the individual should be robust. Sorry.
All right, that's excellent. I just want to talk about the story. We've been using the concept story. And if you look at story in the oral context, actually you understand a lot about how story operates. Because when we think of story now, we always think of story in the written context. But story in its original form is in the oral form. Now, a story is always told and retold, and it's remembered, and it is expressed. Each time somebody tells the story, they add a little bit of themselves. They explore it in slightly different ways. Some things get more emphasized, some things get less emphasized. So the same story, it's actually not just one line. It's actually like a fractal with different people kind of embellishing it, and in each hands of different storyteller and listener, it is different. And all of that is, it's incredible richness. If you look at the elements of the story, the words themselves, all the concepts, those also grow in that form. So it's an enormously complex social construct where individuals have added to it, embellished it, made it richer in the hands of somebody who's amazingly good, like Dante. The stories just upgrade themselves. Stories which were previously kind of was losing their emotive power suddenly get this tremendous living power in them. So stories have stories of their own. They grow too. Next up is going to be Jang, Laura, and Sanjay. Jang.
Yeah, I have to agree with what Joe mentioned earlier, the common goal. I think what's really connect people when we don't have this superficial culture or race similarity is we have to share something in common. Like people here, we share things in common. We all want to learn, expand. That's what we share in common. That's why we keep coming back here to achieve that goal. I think in American too, I think that's maybe, even in a company, you need to have this some goal for American. Then they all can work together, some goal for a company, then they hold everybody together. I think we are missing that in America right now. Seems everybody have their own story. We need to create a story together. All the immigrants, old or new, there people may become after the Indians, American Indian, not Native American. And there's a early immigrant, then there's a later immigrant, then what's the story between everybody? We need to create this new story, new goal. That's instead of divided people, I'm come earlier, so I have more seniority than you come to company later. I think we should focus on the common goal, then we have less difference and more things in common. Create a common story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jing. Next up is Laura. Laura, what do you think is the role of collaboration with a common cause as a solution to the one story problem? You need to unmute yourself. Okay, let's go to Sanjay. Sanjay.
Sorry, I had some difficulty unmuting. So to me, I mean, this is really interesting. We're talking about forms of music, which is a pretty interesting way to look at this. So using that metaphor, I think, and jazz, I think, is a wonderful metaphor for this because, you know, we understand it as, it's based on improvisation. It's based on a back and forth between musicians. It's based on unpredictability. And these are all important elements of collaboration that we're talking about. And you know, Maritza, she raised this idea around incompleteness. And jazz has in it incompleteness. You know, there are pauses in jazz and there's silences in jazz which can be you know, unnerving to the audience. So, you know, this is you know, in a discussion of comprehensivism, I think this is very important because this unpredictability is key to you know, to having collaboration, because you know, so in jazz we even have idea, you know, sounds like or disagreement between two players that is unnerving. But there's something else that I think we need to add into this, and that's that, you know, when we talk about a musical group playing, there's another part of the story that we're leaving out, and that's the audience. Okay, so the group that's playing is vital, but without the audience, that group would not accomplish what we really want. So I would term that as the outsider or the other, right? The audience is not a part of the group. They're not making the music. They are the other. And so to have collaboration, you need to include the other in the music, in the conversation, in the story. Because to me, the best stories are those that include these others. You know, so unless we do that, the story that we have is told by those in power. They're told by people who are known. They're told by people who have importance or have value in society. So I think we need to include the others to make stories richer and truer.
Wow, Sanjay, that's a fantastic point, and we had not talked about it before. I think it's a very deep point. The whole purpose of the story is the audience. You know, that's what you're trying to do. And what you're doing is that you can go ahead. Laura, you were saying something.
Me? No, I didn't say anything.
Okay.
I'm ready though. I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You can go ahead and make your comment, and then we'll go on.
Well, it was something, you know, the jazz kind of thing, you know, the ensemble that you create is unique and it's one time only because you're never going to be able to play it again. And that's amazing. And it's like a little bit about our society as it morphs, you know, that group of people is never going to be the same again. And that little entity. So the stories are always going to be different, no matter how unique they are. They're going to be even more unique over time. You're never going to be able to create a story, one story. And that's one thing. And then the other thing, I think, it's just one thing that's remarkable, I think that we need to do is have our kids learn how to write stories. Because as you say, speaking and writing is very critical. And our kids are not being educated one way or the other per se. A little bit maybe more so than before. But you know, there's a lot to overcome in story, you know, of what these kids go through. Maybe they need to tell stories because, you know, get through that period of stuff that they have to. It would be good if they told stories and wrote stories instead of fighting with each other. Fourth graders, girls shouldn't be fighting with fourth grade girls, you know, so maybe they should write and tell stories.
Thank you, Laura. I mean, I want to, you know, build on what Sanjay was saying and some points that Laura made, and that is the role of listening. You know, even more than telling stories, you have to be actually able to listen to stories, being open to listening to stories. And when you're telling the story, actually seeing how the story is falling on the audience. I think that because it actually completes the loop. You know, you're not just, it's not one way, it is two-way process. And growth requires both that side, being able to take in stories and being able to generate stories and do that in the loop. Thank you, Sanjay. Next up is going to be Kevin, Jyoti, Ambika, and Mike. Kevin.
Yes, thank you. I from another angle look at it. We collaborate by nature. Each entity item unit. For example, for our body, from atom, molecule, from protein, then cells, then from tissue, organs, then different organs make our individual. Then we need a society, however. Then also, if you look at our house, we have marble, stone, bricks, wood, make a house. Then the animal itself, the different animal, they also they're working together. Like you help me, I help others. I cannot come up right away story. So it's by nature. The one thing I different is here talking is like we not just focus ourselves, focus entity itself. What we should be, where it come from. We're from atom, from those units, like from us. We forget them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Next up is going to be Jyoti, Ambika, Mike, and Marissa. Jyoti.
Yeah. So I like the idea of collaboration because you can get more out of it when people are together on some kind of a project. However, since you are involving people, they have personalities, they have some quirks, and they have some different characteristics. So if you study the demand of the society, what is it that society needs? Then everybody can drop their own personal values and work for one common goal, like Joe had said. And that's when the story becomes very beautiful, because then it is one story. It is not the story that each one of us is bringing on the table. Because when you bring too many stories on the table, there's a hodgepodge. There's never going to be intermingling. I will tell you that. When you work with people, it becomes very hard. So that's the best way to do it. You study what is the trend, what is needed, and then you come together and you drop your own stories and bring one story on the table. That's my take. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jyoti. Ambika, the question on the table is, what is the role of collaboration towards a common cause in solving the problem of one story? Go ahead.
That's a whole new question. So
no, that is the only question we're discussing. Go ahead.
No, I think I'm hearing such beautiful contributions from everyone, and it reminds me of ancient days when people literally sat around the fire telling stories and of the stars and everything, and that's how mythology is born, to explain what's happening around. Today it's a different thing. We have TV, and TV is dying actually, from what I've been reading. But I really love where this is going, and I'm happy to start a thread, and I don't know how to reach out to everybody. And if you want to start adding, and we can pass it on, let's see what happens.
This is the thread, Ambika. This is the thread. Let's do it now. Go ahead.
No, I mean actually writing it also.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Mike, followed by Marissa. Mike.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you're collaborating with people, you get an extra benefit, and it's the benefit that comes from struggle. So if you're on a sports team, just as an example, and you are with people, you are obviously collaborating, and that's why you see at the end of a season, men and women, athletes that are just holding each other for dear life because they've become brother and sister, because it is a real struggle along the way. And I know there are a couple of actors here and people that have been in theater. It's the same, on day one when you're doing a reading with a script, and then you flash forward a year later and you've actually produced a show. And when you see actors bowing on stage sometimes and giving each other a hug, it's very similar. So it's just a glue that comes with collaboration that I think if we struggle, like honestly struggle together and get through it, you probably don't really care where I come from. You just care that you and I went through this phase together, which I think is important.
Absolutely. Great point. I mean, you can see that in people who become friends when they fight a war together, when they've been, and they are like brothers, they are like, it becomes family. And that's wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Marissa.
So I want to talk a little bit about this concept of the audience. I'm fascinated by this reminder that the audience is part and parcel of our collaboration for avoiding the danger of a single story. What I think comes out here, and Mike just really just kind of hit the nail there, is that's the wrong way to say that. Sorry. If we have gone through a drama or trauma together and we come out on the other side as brothers, we now have a shared story. A shared story is not the same thing as a single story. So, that's what I hear when Jyoti is saying, if you get all these stories, it's no good. You want one story. I don't think it's one story. You want a shared story, which is a compositional assembly of many, many stories. Now they have glued together, and the glue is us plus the audience. Because if you have, that's where the collaboration has to be. If you ensure that all parties present put a little thread into the making of this, we have, and this is what Adichie says to us. She says, our lives, our cultures are composed of many overlapping stories. So maybe the goal here is we want to live within that small little spot in all the Venn diagrams that looks the best because it has that color coding. That's where we want to find, that's what we're looking for always. We're going to dance around all the Venn diagram until we find that spot. And that's where the shared stories live. And that's probably what we need.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Marissa. Next, I want to go to an application question to this meetup, what we do on, day in and day out. Because I think this is a good example of what we are talking about. Okay, so how does your experience of participating in these meetups connect with this issue of collaboration, interaction between stories, shared stories, anything? So the entire discussion, how would you apply to what we do here at 52 Living Ideas? Go ahead and type ! if you'd like to share. Evanique.
Yeah, I think what we do here is very unique in the world. So I think the key is we listen to each other, and we don't try to prove each other wrong. We don't try to be right. We just try to learn from each other. And we come together, we bring all of our past, all of our experiences, and we apply it to a question that is asked. But we listen to each other and we see, oh, there's a different way to answer that question, or there's a different way to approach that situation. And I think what we also do is we take it back to our own, maybe I should speak for myself, but for me, I take it back to my individual life and I apply it to how I interact with family and friends, because now I have a new knowledge base based off of what people have contributed here. So in a sense, everyone here has not only contributed to me, but they have contributed to the people that I interact with outside of 52 Living Ideas.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Evanique. Amazing. Next up is going to be Joe, Sanjay, Jyoti, and Marissa. Joe.
So what we do here, and I think that what's so special, I mean, and you've talked about it in the past, is the idea of syntopical thinking, right? And if you think about the works that we're studying, and seeing the connections between all of those, I think that is incredibly powerful. That allows us to see the world differently. It allows us to understand cultures differently. This is something to me that is this is really a challenge to this really does challenge any kind of one story and it allows us to actually challenge our own perspectives on the world. There are a lot of things that, as far as challenging my map of the world, that I've been able to do since joining 52 Living Ideas, on a number of different areas. So I think that's, I mean, the one thing is as far as challenging.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Next up is going to be Sanjay, followed by Jyoti and Marissa. Sanjay.
Okay, thanks, Shrikant. So I think, I mean, from what I've seen, everyone that I've seen attend is really here for connecting, for both emotional and intellectual connections, you know, amongst each other as a group, and that really embodies three aspects. Learning, you know, that's central to pretty much everything that I've seen, that I've been involved in. Exploring, and the last I think is most important, because this is unique, and I've seen very, very few groups that bring this, and that's compassion. So doing all of these three things together, I think that's fundamentally what we're about.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. Next up is Jyoti.
Well, I have seen myself as an evolving human being from the time I started to where I am right now. I think I have learned how different people express their views, their perspectives in different ways, and how people who don't agree with each other still express their notions in a very amicable way. And collaboration, yes, this is a perfect example of collaboration, very classic example. I have enjoyed the breakout rooms where you feel so comfortable with each other that you can say almost anything without being judged. Now, where would you find a group where you are coming from someplace or nowhere, and you are saying something that other people are listening attentively, and sometimes they have some very good suggestions. So having said that, I think that the whole story about one single story tells it all is not quite right in this group, at least. The group is very open, non-judgmental, and very knowledge-based. So I think I got into the right group. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you here. It's you found the right group, and you're the right person for the group. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is going to be Marissa.
For me, what this group brought is empowerment. There are beliefs that I have held for years, and I kind of either never gave them voice or whispered them kind of apologetically to people because I didn't feel I had the right to say them, either because I wasn't sure how strongly I believed them, or I wasn't sure how crazy I would sound, or I just didn't think it was the right time, climate, atmosphere. And with this group and with the Thinking Society, I have found that I can give voice to my thoughts, and in the voicing of them and turning them over with others, I now have more confidence, and I feel empowered to state things that I have believed for years with a stronger voice, a sense of clarity, and a confidence that I just didn't have before.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Marissa. I want to highlight this with the three books that we are studying, because I think that is the epitome of this approach and the use of this approach. We started with Tao Te Ching, and we added Gospel of John, and now we have added Bhagavad Gita. Traditionally, the way in which each of these books are studied is very different than what we are doing. But each of us is communing with the book on our own. So we are really trying to connect with Tao Te Ching. We're trying to connect with each of these books. And then speaking from the heart, openly about what we are getting from it. And it's quite stunning when you do that, because all these stories have been shaped by so many retelling of stories that they look actually very, very different. And it is just stunning. I found out, I was telling the story of Savitri, and I found out that the meaning of the story as it's being interpreted today, in today's Indian culture, is exactly opposite of what the original story was. So there is the story of stories, and being able to go back to the roots and seeing it for our own and hearing other people. And some of us have been studying each of these books for a long period of time. Some of us are new to it. Regardless of the level of familiarity or knowledge, being able to talk to each other, regardless of the differences in our interpretations. We've had discussions on the Bible where people have started out with exactly opposite positions. One saying that translations makes it impossible to understand what the true meaning is. And second, saying that no, it's always possible if you to look through the translation to the true meaning. And how do you do that? In the process, discussing a whole bunch of other concepts. So even for each of these, we've had this rich experience. But when you actually, and slowly, and this is just developing, we are able to see connections between these three. These are foundational books of three very different cultures, which have developed in a very different way. And we are able to see both commonalities and differences. Just as commonalities are important, differences are important. They bring richness. The commonality brings a depth and a centering kind of thing, saying that at the root, all human beings are the same. And the differences bring out the richness, how rich we human beings are, and what is possible to us. And it's been, one of the most amazing experiences. So I'm just grateful to everybody who's here, who keeps coming back, and just the, amount they contribute. And what happens is that by doing this together, over and over, we develop this common knowledge, which makes possible discussions at a much deeper and richer level as we go on. So next, what I want to do is I want to tell you what's coming up. So I'm going to start with Mike, because Mike is going to do the next Comprehensivist Wednesdays. Mike, what are you doing?
Well, I have my good friend and international master, Rusa Goletiani, who's going to join us. And I just published a short intro video for everybody for next Wednesday. And so we're going to look at polymathy. And
folks, I'll be announcing it just in a few minutes after the meetup is over. Go ahead, Mike.
So we'll cover again how chess is a good teaching tool to teach comprehensivism to people, but more importantly, I'm very interested in having Shrikant kind of interview Rusa and have him take her through the same topics we're talking about today. She grew up in Soviet Georgia, was an extremely talented chess player as a kid, and has transitioned. She's a mom with 3 kids and now works in finance. And along the way, from being a very young, very, very strong player to where she is now, there's a wealth of stories that fit really well with what we're talking about tonight. And I'm very interested, Shrikant, in you getting to be one-on-one with her a little bit in the way that you like to improvise. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll throw, of course, my 3 cents in as well.
Wonderful. Really looking forward to that. Jeff, what are you doing and when are you doing it?
So tomorrow night, Thursday at 7, the session on the future of leadership with the subtitle of Considering Growth Leadership is ironically going to be on how we learn the best things from our experiences and the stories that we tell ourselves and each other about them. And we're actually going to do a little reading of some really inspirational and amazing stories together, and then reflect on that in a thoughtful way as a practice for how we can get better at telling our own stories to ourselves, as well as telling each other stories in a way that helps us to keep moving forward together.
Wonderful. I'm going to have different people who are kind of core parts of the other meetups talk a little bit about the meetups, because this is a comprehensivist Wednesday. So I want to show you what are the various other comprehensivist things that we are doing, so you get an idea of the richness. So Ebony, could you talk a little bit about Gospel of John, and then I'm going to go to Joe to talk about Tao Te Ching meetups. Ebony.
Yeah, I have been really enjoying the Gospel of John meetups. I love the perspective of it. I grew up as Christian Catholic, and so you hear the Gospels, but you don't really dive deep. And I think the key is that you have people in that meetup that are atheists, agnostic, different religions, as well as Christians. So you hear all these different views on how people view the Gospel of John. And you never looked at it from that perspective, because when I studied it before, it was always just like one tunnel view out of a Christian view. And it just adds a richness to it. And I think, with what you added with the book, the Thomas Aquinas book, where,
Yes,
goes deeper, I've never went that deep. And it really just added a richness, and it sparked me to study it all over again that I didn't have before I attended this meetup. So thank you.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Ebony. So now it's going to be Joe about the Tao Te Ching meetups, followed by Marissa about the Design Way meetups. Joe.
Yeah, so I mean, the Tao Te Ching is actually, I enjoy it more than any other meetup that we have, because I think
that's because you are moderating it.
Oh,
and you probably do a better job than I do. So
no, that's not. No, that really, it's one of those things where I am completely calm during it, because I'm just taking it in. And there are so many great comments about it. And actually, the thing that it's enabled me to do is kind of look at the East and look at the West and see what the East is actually good at doing and what the West is good at doing. And the most important thing that it's kind of given me is the understanding that we're naming things and the importance of naming things and the perils of naming things, where you go too far, that you create something that is not functional any longer. But there is the idea of nature too, is understanding nature itself and understanding order, with comparing that with my Stoic principles. It's been a very powerful combination for me. That's what really the Tao has brought to me. There are also things from the Tao as far as kind of taking a step back and understanding how to live through nature. And I had never really considered that at all. I had taken a very Western mentality up until recently. And it brings this degree of tranquility to me that probably I wouldn't have otherwise had. And it's something that I actually read in the morning to bring a certain calmness to me. and it really does work. So you can also see how it manifested itself during the 3 spheres meetups as well. So that was extremely enlightening, especially the meetup with that we did with China specifically. You started to see
John
where,
Alton, yeah, John.
yeah, that was excellent. Where you started to see how China understands these principles and why they're so important. And you start to see that they're actually returning to the Tao in a way, and how important that is, and formal cause as well. But
wonderful, thank you, Joe. Marissa, what about the Design Way meetups?
So the Design Way it's simple and so not simple at the same time. It's fascinating in that I'll point you to the second piece of the name, intentional change in an unpredictable world. So it's like a blueprint. It allows, at least for me, it allows me to take the concepts that I'm learning and studying in other aspects and give them shape and sharpness. And it's like I can see here the idea of intention, and I'm finding that all things moving forward with intention are the path towards change, and it's intentional change. Like I had not before considered that if you just change random, if you decide you're just going to change something, it's like throwing a grenade. So what we're learning here in the Design Way is we're learning how to move forward with intention, with purpose. And it's just really a almost mind-blowing, well, more it's eye-opening, as it were, concept that as we don't do certain things without proper planning, well, why would we just move forward in our life blindly and grope and about? Why not try to move forward with intention? And this concept of, and Shrikant took the Design Way, and he's telling us, you are a designing animal. And once you get over the fact that you're an animal, because we are, even though we don't like to remember that, you stop and you think about, what am I hearing here? So animal honors the emotional aspect of our very nature. So we're at our very core emotional creatures, but we're designing emotional creatures. I had been of the mind that the analytical side is constantly at war with the emotional side. But this phrase, design animal, tells me, no, this is not true. That both can live in harmony. And guess who has the power to make it so? You do. And that's, again, this word empowering. The idea that our very lives can be a practice, a lifelong practice for learning how to design things and creating a design culture, in so much as not only am I going to work on myself to make processes of design, but I'm also going to help others within my circle to do the same, because I'm going to tell them that they're designing animals. Because this book is telling me, and many of the things we're reading here, that everybody has it within them. It's not a special exclusive club. You just have to find a way to tap it. And I mean, that's really amazing to me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marissa. So now let me tell you about our newest series of meetups, and that is the one on Bhagavad Gita. And this is the last of the 3 pieces, because I'm a student of history. You really need to know the West. You really need to know India, and you really need to know China in order to get like the major, kind of the large scale stories. These are cultures that have been there. There's a very large cultures, large number of people, about 1 billion each, that have been together for a long period of time, separated from each other. So if you understand these 3 cultures, that's a good start of being educated. Now, this going to India is personally an amazing experience for me, because it's a combination of being a consummate insider and a total outsider at the same time for me. So it's a very odd experience. I grew up there. I grew up in a literary family. So and up until 7th grade, I did not know English. So I read and spoke Marathi, which is a language which is based on Sanskrit. I learned Sanskrit. And so I have very deep roots in the Indian culture. At the same time, I've been away from it. So I have an external perspective. I've been focused on the West for the past 30 years. So kind of going back, it is surprising to see this. And what I'm trying to do, as Sanjay said, it's all about the audience. What I'm trying to do is to actually make Indian mind accessible to the Western mind. That's what I've kind of set my goal to be. And it's enormously difficult. So I started out with Bhagavad Gita, and I realized that it was too philosophical. So I wanted to give a little bit of more context. So I started by, in the first meetup, I actually sing to give you a sense of the stories that are there of Krishna at the end of the meetup. Then I said, well, that was a little too far away from, I can't do this every time. So I realized that I need to tell more stories. Again, we were talking about stories. Stories are a really powerful way of showing what a mind or a culture is like. So I did this entire meetup on this story of Savitri, a microcosm of Indian philosophy. Okay, I recommend it very highly as a good introduction to what we are trying to do with Indian culture, because it's a story. At the same time, it is a microcosm of Indian philosophy. So the themes that are hid there are very deep themes. So you get a good idea of what the philosophy is like. What I'm trying to do with Bhagavad Gita, I'm slowly evolving the format, because I wanted to evolve the format in interaction with people. I wanted to see something that would actually work well for everybody. So what I'm doing is that, and so finally, I think at this time for this Friday, I think I have the format really well worked out. I feel happy about it. So what we're going to do, what we always do, is that we're going to start out with actual listening to what it sounds like, because in the Indian mind, the sound is fundamental, because all of these Indian works were recited and remembered. So you would remember this entire Bhagavad Gita in your head, and it would play back to you anytime you want when you were thinking about something. So imagine that large role played by sound. So I want to start that out by a very short, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, actually hearing what the Bhagavad Gita is like. Then we will have multiple readings, just like we have in Tao Te Ching. Then what I'm going to do is that myself, as well as few people who know Bhagavad Gita, or who are able to kind of understand both the culture and the text, are going to do quick summaries of whatever we are talking about. So that actually makes it easy for people to say, oh, that's what it means. And then we're going to go into like questions, and then finally to evaluations. So we're going to do it in that way. And so I invite you, it's the most ambitious thing. The good thing is that I can read Sanskrit. So I'm reading it in original. I am trying to use my Marathi translation of it to fill in the gaps. I'm using Sri Aurobindo's translation, which is the one that I recommend because it has the deepest commentaries on it. So it gives you the backstory, the core ideas being discussed. So I recommend that, but you're welcome to use any translation that speaks to you. But so I'm really, really excited about that. We've just started that. So, and all these meetups, by the way, are available on the YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and search for 52 Living Ideas, everything is there. So this is wonderful. So Marissa, what did you think of this meetup?
That was great. I really loved the commentary and the tying in of so many of our other concepts. That's always gold. And I think this was good for the Comprehensivist Wednesday, because it also brings in and reminds us of so many points that CJ has made for us.
Wonderful. I have to tell you that we are doing a piece on literature. CJ and Phil and Doug have been working on Dante, and they have finally reached Paradiso, and they have arrived. So we are going to do an overview of Dante. So even if you have not read Dante, this Sunday's meetup at 5 o'clock is going to be very special. This is celebrating the 700th year of Dante. So we will. So that's going to be this Sunday, and then we are going to go into Dostoevsky for about 3 months, and that's only because both CJ and Phil wanted to do something light. This is the first time Dostoevsky has been called light. The book we're going to do is, I think it's called Possessed, is one name for it. It's a short work of his. And then we are going to go into something far more deeper than Dostoevsky or Dante, I think. So stay tuned for that. We are finalizing that.
What is that?
That's
you gotta say it. You can't just like leave it.
That is still being negotiated. So I will basically. Which one would you say? If you wanted to say something which is very deep, if you want to pick literature, let's ask folks. Go ahead. If you wanted to pick a work of literature which is very, very deep, and I want to actually do multiple ones like this. So which one would you pick? Joe, what would you pick?
So I have actually been talking to Deepti a little bit, and she had mentioned, and I kind of in agreement, and I know Madeline really wants to do it. She's not here. War and Peace.
War and Peace, okay?
Because I never finished it, so.
No, that's not a criteria. It's not question that.
Well,
a book that wears you down and puts you in. That's.
Well,
not
I need a group to go through it with.
No. That's not. It's
Crime and Punishment would be
okay.
Fun too.
Okay, wonderful. So sorry about that. Next up is going to be. Let's see who wants to share what they think is a great book. Great, kind of very deep work which will match at least Dante. That's the standard, okay? Evanik. Oh, no, you didn't. Okay, Jyoti, you wanted to say something before?
I did. I said you forgot to mention the audience that I was the one who had requested you about Bhagavad Gita last year.
You had?
Uh-huh.
Oh, no. Okay. So that's good. But that's a great thing, because I've been thinking about doing this, these 3 cultures is something that I've been working on. And Bhagavad Gita, my other choice was the Yoga Sutras, but that's far more difficult than Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, because I gave a very short summary of Bhagavad Gita, and I said,
wait a minute. Jyoti, go ahead and give us very short summary. Go ahead, because I want people to understand. Go ahead.
Okay, my summary was that we have 2 little birds in us. One bird is always very hungry. It hops for fruits. First she goes to one tree, then the other tree, and then she's not satisfied. And the other bird is just watching this bird, which is hopping and just waiting that when this bird will stop. And if she does stop, she says at some point, and she says, you know what? I got everything. I ate all the fruits. And now what? Now what do I want? So that is self-actualization. Then that's the time when the self-actualization begins, that you start thinking about your own karma, your own actions, and you say, you know what? I have been not being very good. I've been greedy. I've been going around here and there looking for things that didn't matter. And we all have that. The bird that is witnessing is our conscious. And what we are, the bird which is hopping from here to there is a surface. It's like we don't, that does not have any conscious, materialistic. It is just looking around the world like she doesn't have any soul, any consciousness. So that is what the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is, to make you realize that what you have, your internal resources, that's what counts, and how to develop them, how to go about in your life journey developing them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's a great summary, Jyoti.
Okay.
So what we're going to do actually in this Friday's meetup is we're going to be discussing just one concept. It's called Sthita Prajna. Sthita means stable or firm, and Prajna means wisdom. So it's a question of having a stable wisdom. Wisdom is regarded as a characteristics, but the way in which this word works in Sanskrit, it is a faculty. So it's basically remaining centered. How do you remain centered at the core of your being without being pushed hither and thither, here and there, with your emotions, with your senses? How do you keep coming back to the center and acting from the center? So the entire discussion is just about this concept of focusing on the center. And you know what? I shouldn't keep this suspense. Joe, is it okay if I tell you what?
Please,
what I was trying not to tell you?
I was gonna probably text you afterwards.
Okay. All right. Okay. But I mean, the timing is not fixed yet. We're still negotiating it, but I want to do, I want to do Faust by Goethe.
Wow.
Because that is one of the deepest, and partly because Goethe is one of the greatest comprehensivists ever. So he's in the class of Leonardo and Dante. Wow. He's definitely at that level. And Faust is his masterpiece. It integrates very deeply in all of the other religious works that we are doing, but doing it in a completely different mode. The enlightenment, it's the enlightenment mind. So it's a different mind looking at the same kind of issues. And it's the artistic level is incredible. The thought level is incredible. So I think that's a really powerful one. So that's one, Phil definitely wants to do it. And I'm very eager to do that. So next, go ahead.
And it's something actually that's been integrated into our previous readings with like Jordan Peterson. I mean, he actually integrates a lot of.
No, but the thing is that it's like people like Goethe, just like Jordan Peterson integrates some things. Like for example, he integrates Nietzsche. But when you read Nietzsche in original, it is something else. It's going to be the same thing. With Goethe is going to actually create a new world, just like Dante did. So next up is Marissa.
That's awesome. I'm excited. That would have been higher on my list of choices. Another one is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I'm probably saying that name wrong. I don't know if you're familiar with that work, but it's a great, it's up there, great literature grade. So that's what I was going to suggest, but Faust is kind of awesome. Hey, also I do want to mention that we finished the discussion group on the flow book.
Yeah, tell me.
We're looking at doing another book by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. We've not yet decided which book, but we're looking in January to do another one. If you can't, I don't know if you followed any of them, but some of the threads and the themes for the concept of taking control of your consciousness and figuring out how to generate flow yourself, they align so well with so many of the other things we've been studying here with the Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita, a little bit, well, you know, from the little bit I've seen so far. And the design way, it's this, the intention part, that aspect of it, I see it so strongly. I was seeing it in the flow. So when we started flow first, so when we started the design way, it was just like, oh my gosh, that's what we're saying, what he's saying over there. The flow, it's just a little softer. Now, you know, I disagree with MC a little bit and the idea of, you know, he's telling you to search for happiness, and you know how I feel about that. But concepts, they just align really well with, and it's fast. It's like a surprising discovery to me every time we go back.
Wow, wonderful. All right, so this has been amazing. Laura, you have a selection?
No, but I think you should think about creating a course for a college level course.
What is this? This is a higher than college level course.
Yeah,
why would we go down to doing just college level courses?
Because you got to educate all the way down. But I mean, graduate level course, most definitely. This would be a fascinating series of courses.
This is much higher, much more challenging. You know, you have to create your own course.
To write an interesting course that would work through a semester of college where people would actually, you know, dig in and do writing and listening and think. No, but there's so much wealth in this, all of this. And I mean, I really think that it should transcend itself into something, a project which could be designed into a course using, you know, whatever. But I think that it would serve, I mean, it would be a great testament to what you're doing if it could be done into, I think so. As a person who likes to see good instructional materials arrive at courses rather than shitty textbooks and boring lectures.
Sure, thank you. So what I would say is that I think that the format that we have here and what we are doing here is at a higher level than what you can find at colleges. Because the way in which things are done at colleges is by dividing knowledge into a silo and trying to do something within it. And this is much more. This is what we are doing here is we're kind of going across disciplines. We are doing that. So I think college needs to become more like this, not that we need to become more like college. So I definitely want, you know, so I'm definitely very much focused on education. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm looking for ways of doing, by the way, Laura, you're on mute. So can you go ahead and make?
I'm just going to say that these are the kinds of things you need to bring to make change. Otherwise, it's going to be the same forever, you know? So
but what I'm saying, Laura, is that the structure of college is actually an older structure, and that is actually in the process of dying. And what you will find is that like 50 years from now or 20 years from now, maybe even sooner than that.
I hope so.
We are going to have, I think universities is a big bubble. They're not worth the money. They're actually doing a lot of damage. 4 years that people spend at the university, separated from life, not learning from life, is actually doing a lot more harm than good. So there is something, it has to be completely replaced. Next up is going to be Ambika. Go ahead, Ambika, very quick comment.
I just wanted to follow up with what Laura said, and I think I've said this to you before. Sometime maybe start some kind of a process that could be introduced and tried at colleges, because I was trying to do something like this and nobody wanted to. So
somebody's got to be
but it's so important to wake up.
No, I understand, but I think you're assuming that the forms of the past are the ones that will have the solution of the future. Just like, for example, what we are doing with, I mean, to give you an example, okay, let's take our study of Bible. Many people have come to me and say, oh, you know what, my Bible study group is doing it this way, so you should do it this way. And that's not really, actually what we are doing is something higher, something more. Similarly, people who are familiar with Bhagavad Gita says, what are you doing? You know, you are not doing it right. This is how you do Bhagavad Gita. Just the way in which it is being done actually is not way of actually getting into the text. The idea that many of us are going between all these things. So on one hand, I think we are actually going and looking at these texts being true to what they are, far more than is being done in most contexts. I think what we are doing is more, and what I need to do, I do need to do more with it, but I'm working on several things. So one direction in which I am going is I want to see how this can reflect back into writing. And that's one of the things that I'm working on. I'm working with a project with one of the best content that we have produced is what we have done with Mark Stallman and his series on the 3 spheres. It is really, really deep. And I'm in the process of working on converting that into a new kind of a book, which is not really a book. But so it's like you have to invent new medias. See, the discussion that we are doing is not, it's not about going back to the sources. It is not going back to the older sources. We have to invent new ways of doing this, and that's what we need to do. All right, folks. All right, folks. So thank you very much. So that's sorry, Laura. Go ahead. Evanik first, and then Laura.
Oh no, I thought we were all saying good night, so I was just going to say good night.
Okay, good night. Good night.
I'm not leaving though. I'm going to hear what Laura has to say.
Okay, Laura, go ahead. Okay, Joe.
I'm looking forward to shaking up the education industry.
Yes, no, it needs to be. It's really in a bad state. And what happens is that the way to fix it is not to accept all its premises,
right,
accept all its structures, because the problem is in the structures themselves. So you need a radical solution which goes around it. So it doesn't really, like, if you say, okay, I have to do just the same thing but better, never works. You really need a radical solution. So that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm working on.
And I never meant to suggest that you fit into that structure. I'm a radical curriculum person. So I'm talking about you're the future, and you got to drive this into the future. And it means that it doesn't look like anything from the past.
Absolutely. I agree.
I didn't mean to insult you and try to.
No. That's fine. That's fine. No, I appreciate that. I know exactly where you're coming from. It's just, so that's definitely something that's on my list. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm still trying to figure out when I'm trying to improve my skills a little bit. I'm trying to, I think the big step is kind of, if you want to look at it at a very high level, what I've done is that what we have done together is we have taken books, written works, and we have put this oral envelope on the top of it, which makes possible far deeper engagement with the work than was done before. And this is actually not new. This is the scribal mode. This is what Aristotle did in his peripatetic school. This is what went on in the Gurukuls of India. This is what happened when Aquinas was teaching at the University of Paris in 1200. That's exactly the kind of mode that we have. But what I need to do is I need to take that, move it back into writing and make it digital. So that combination is going to be really powerful. And I'm actually starting work on that this Sunday. So really looking forward to that. All right, folks. So always an honor to have you guys here. We'll see you soon. And thank you, Marissa, for a great meetup.
Thank you, Maritza.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shritai.
guys.
Thank you, Marissa.
Good night.
It was
Wonderful.
wonderful. Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.